Hey, welcome to Rambling Read Podcast. I'm your host, Marie, and I just want to welcome you to this insightful space dedicated to exploring the depths of our emotions as well as the psychology behind them. But most importantly, embracing our authentic selves. So if you want to better understand yourself, those around you, or just find a connection in this complex world without all the woo-woo and the kumbaya, this right here is where you need to be. With a little sprinkle of cussing and dark humor, you'll find the support and encouragement you need to honor your true self and unlock the power to living your best, fulfilling life. All right. So today's episode is all about transparency, why it's so hard to be open sometimes, and what happens when we choose to willingly withhold information, whether that's to protect someone's feelings or avoid conflict. Hiding the truth comes with some unintended consequences that can greatly hurt our relationships. But there's good news. Honest, transparent communication is a skill we can all use to learn and build better, stronger relationships. So let's get into why honesty matters and how you can embrace it in your own life. The main areas we'll focus on in this episode will be why people feel upset when information is withheld, the psychological and relational effects of secrecy, and then also just some tips on how you can better communicate more transparent and effectively. First, before we get into it, let's define some things to make sure we are on the same page of understanding what exactly I'm talking about here. So first thing, trust. Trust, by definition, is the assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. Secondly, honesty is free of deceit, untruthfulness, sincerity. Now, transparency and communication and relationships. I got this definition from Michigan State University. The act of good and bad information being shared upward, downward, and laterally in a way that allows all to see the why behind the words. I just want to remind you that being transparent means that the receiver didn't have to explicitly ask for the answer to a question, and they also didn't have to infer it based on what you may or may not have said. Did you know that there's actually an innate human need for transparency and honesty in relationships? Fundamentally, trust is required to provide a sense of safety. For example, let's think about young children learning how to trust. They're going to rely mostly on their caretakers because that's the reason why they've gotten to the age they are now. This is happening all the time while you're younger. Just imagine the parent telling the child, don't touch the fire, don't touch the fire every time they're in the kitchen. Don't touch the stove, don't touch the candle. At some point, hopefully not because they got burnt, but it clicks for the kid. I shouldn't touch that fire. They may not know why because they've never got burnt, but they know that their caretaker is telling them not to do something. So don't do it. They're also learning that they can depend on this thing to be true. The flame will hurt them, harm them. It's hot, all the things about a flame, right? They can rely on the fact that that's a true fact no matter where the flame is. So whether it's in the stove, whether it's the fireplace, the candle, a flame is a flame and it's hot and it's going to hurt. A toddler, can put this together. Now, thinking about us as adults, similarly, having people around you that you can trust and rely on, depend on, is super beneficial because they've consistently shown you who they are and that you can depend on them, that you can rely on them. It allows you to focus your energy on other things. And it also gives you a sense of relaxation, comfortability, just security, and a sense of control that you know, with a reasonable assumption, what the experience is going to be like. You know what to expect from this person. There are some emotional responses triggered by keeping a secret, right? I think I can safely assume we've all kept a secret. Now, just remember, you were probably tired, you were drained. Depending on what it was, you might have been depressed, you might have felt shame, anxiety. You might have experienced just overall poor health, even just while you're holding the secret. Depending on your level of self-awareness, you could have also felt the weight and the pressure of holding this secret in and what that's doing to you. You're physically, feeling something. You're constantly in this state of preoccupation, keeping that secret locked in and tucked in. It's chaotic. You may have even had to create a facade, something crazy. There's also some emotional responses when you've learned about a secret. You might be feeling betrayed, alone, secluded because, you didn't know this thing. Who else knew this thing? You're out the loop about it. Maybe you're also feeling a loss of control and a loss of autonomy because someone made the decision to keep information from you. And also, when you've revealed a secret, there's no surprise why you feel this sense of relief and this weight lifted off your shoulders now because the secret is out. Whether you revealed it, whether it came out, however it came out, whatever happened, the tension is released, right? So just think about like a gender reveal, something that's planned, or even just having a conversation with your partner, like you're unhappy in this relationship or you've been cheating or you're self-harming. Once you get it out, you literally can feel the stress release. There's actual psychology behind this feeling that you feel. There's an article in Forbes magazine about how neuroscientists actually believe it's biologically better for us to confess our secrets. Because holding on to the secret puts our brain in this awkward, compromised position. I'll go into it, right? Because let's get a little bit. So what happens is there's a cingulate cortex in your brain, right? And it's responsible for our emotional responses. We're actually wired to just tell the truth. So it sends a signal to other regions of the body, to do its thing so that it can do its thing and keep moving, and it just wants to learn. But when you keep a secret locked inside, you don't allow the cingulate cortex to do its natural thing, and you're stressing it out. You're stressing yourself out. Neurosurgeon Dr. Gopal Chopra, he actually calls it complications of emotional burden, and I just love that phrase. So we will be referring to it as such going forward. Back to what's going on in our brain. So when your prefrontal cortex wins the battle over your brain of keeping this secret, the pressure it causes on your cingulate cortex leads your body to ramp up those stress hormones that encourage that flight or fight response. So every time you think about this deeply held secret, your cortisol levels shooting up. They're surging. It can also affect your memory. It can affect your blood pressure. It can also affect your GI tract, okay? And metabolism. Because you're just in this constant state of, irritated bowel syndrome. You ever heard of it? Are you seeing now how this can impact your relationships regardless of the role you're playing? If you're willfully holding back information that, if received by the other party, could result in a possibly adverse reaction to the one you want, you are literally attempting to control the outcome of the situation, and you're manipulating the result, right? Did you consider that you deciding to hold this information and what you're deciding to hold, you're only able to do this because you trust the other person's reaction? You trust in their consistency of how they operate. So you're assuming what the reaction will be to whatever the topic is, right? And so you can only decide what to hold because of your level of trust with this person. I just think it's interesting how it's about trust both ways, right? Or the lack of it. For me, this is where the trust breaks, because you could trust me to be me, but I was trusting you under false pretenses. So personally, at that point, I start running back all our previous conversations. What else don't I know? Do I know anything at all? Now I'm suspicious. Depending on the severity of the situation, our foundation could be permanently damaged. Our relationship may not be as safe as I thought it was, or you don't respect me enough, or you don't trust me enough in the way that I thought we did mutually. And now there's conflict between us because you're going to want to defend your reason behind why you did what you did. And I'm going to have questions of a lot of things, probably not only just the topic at hand, but also now there's a conflict within myself. Now I'm going to think about like, how did I miss this? How did I not know that? And I got to replay all these things. And then it's like, a lack of confidence in my own decision making. And then just the trust again and all the things. Ultimately, you remove the opportunity to collaborate and cooperate when you decide you're going to make all the decisions for everybody. Now, here's a place for us to pivot, because when it comes to perception of intent, right? Now, oftentimes as the receiver, if we know we were left in the dark, it's normal to assume the worst. Hi, me. I'm thinking like, are they hiding this to manipulate me? Are they trying to control me? Like, did they think I couldn't handle it? And now, as a self-admitted overthinker, I'm also an oversharer. Other trauma responses. It's hard for me to necessarily see the positive aspects of withholding information and why someone would withhold information. But like I said in my previous episode, if you have information that revolves around me, could benefit me, could change something for me, could help me make a decision about me, you get what I'm saying? Me personally, I like the details and the facts so I can make my own informed decision, and I have more information to do that with, right? You can keep how you think I'm going to react and how you think I'm going to feel about it. Just me speaking for me, probably not going to care once I know whatever information is. If I received it in a compassionate way, that's probably not my concern, me personally. But also, I know this is a trauma response for me in my life because of so many times and so many instances there were decisions being made for me and around me that I had no idea were going on, and I was unaware of them until, like they say, the truth comes. How many phrases do we know? The truth comes out, what's done in the dark comes to the light. Now, with that being said, I have learned a lot, just maturing and lifing and some good old therapy. I could see now that it wasn't always about me. And a lot of the time, the person holding the information, they may not be ready to share. They may not be able to be as transparent as I would like or as I am. And that could be a boundary for them. And in that instance, there's nothing I can do but respect it, especially when the subject doesn't revolve around me or it doesn't affect me greatly. Take myself out of it. I could do that. But also, immediately after that, if the information comes out and it does involve me, baby, now it's up and my reaction is what it is. And you're going to have to grant me the same grace as I dive into the deep end. Figure it out. All right, I'm going to need some of that grace. I found something interesting just when I was looking up like the psychology behind why this happens or why we feel how we feel when this happens. And I actually learned that traditional Navajo Indians, when they go for like medical exam or, for whatever reason, they're seeing a doctor, they don't even want to hear about negative side effects associated with their treatment or whatever they're discussing, because they believe that just invites the risk to occur. Never knew. Like many things in life, there's a time and place for most things. So without a doubt, you should be using some sound judgment and some discernment when you're trying to decide who, when, where, what, why, how to relay some information. Or even if you should. I actually do believe there's definitely instances where it's justified to withhold information. The main one I'm thinking of is when you're protecting someone's emotional or physical well-being. Maybe you're waiting for the right time to share some news that you think is difficult. This also isn't to say that you shouldn't say anything, because people don't know what they don't know. So in that particular scenario, I would just spend more time thinking of how I would deliver the information as opposed to what the information is. It is what it is, right? But you can find a way to say what you need to say. Now, the second thing that comes to me, obviously, like the surprise is, oh, it's a party, the baby, you're going on a trip, whatever. Like, that's fun, that's cute. We get that. Now, in that same kind of surprise, right? Where it could be a negative surprise or something too, like, oh, she cheating on him, but that's not my business. See how y'all could turn that on and off? Turn that on and off. You know, and you definitely know. So, like in an instance when someone is asking you about information that isn't your news to share, or it's not your business, right? But they're coming to you because maybe they've come to you in the past. You're a reliable source. Maybe you, the mixy one, and you do know the tea, honey. Like, you got the tea because you're nosy. No, I'm joking. But they're coming to you about information on somebody else. Now, use your discernment and think, maybe, hmm, maybe I shouldn't, divulge too much information that was trusted to me, right? And you can steer that person over there to who that information belongs to, right? So you're not, and if you don't even feel comfortable doing that, you go to the source and you just say, hey, homie wants to know about this, and I didn't feel comfortable sharing that. That's your business. I just wanted you to know that they're concerned or whatever. Now, leave it to them to figure that out. You're out of there. Lastly, for me, and probably most obvious, it's just going to be professionally. Confidentiality is a major thing, and I don't think you want to get fired about that when you hold the information, right? So whether that's a HIPAA violation because you at the doctor's office and you're telling so-and-so about what the husband got going on, don't play with them HIPAA people, and do not play with those security clearances and the security violation because you running your mouth. Everything is not gossip, honey. Use the judgment and the discernment. Now, on the other side of that, there's also time when you holding information is going to be harmful, whether that's deliberately or not. But if you're deliberately being deceitful and manipulating situations and information that you're giving or keeping, if you're trying to achieve and control like a specific response or reaction, and especially if you are avoiding accountability or conflict resolution. Let's just say maybe you're leaving out your role in a situation in an attempt to, gain supporters. So you're not sharing all the details. To me, you're doing yourself a disservice if you operate like that, because you're not looking for the truth necessarily, right? You're looking for some compassion, a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on. And it's like, you could have just said that instead of, creating some story, because it's not Real Housewives, love. Like, it's real life. And like, it's just cool. I mean, nobody's appreciating that. So instead of sharing the facts, you're just sharing what you want to share and you're trying to control the response. Could have just said that, love. Now, after all that, just tell me you've dealt with a narcissist without telling me you've dealt with a narcissist. So if you're ever debating, like, what should I tell, what shouldn't I tell, like, because you have to have a balance, right? It's some things are a need to know. You have to determine all that, and it's a case by case thing, and there's no cookie cutter to tell you, oh yeah, every time this is what you do. That ain't what I'm trying to do here, babe. All I'm saying is you need to be so fucking for real with yourself, and you need to evaluate your motives. 2 simple questions to ask yourself. Number 1, am I withholding this information for their benefit or for mine? The next question to ask yourself is, what will happen? You could say if they find out, but when they find out later, because we just won't keep it a buck. Processing those questions will help you figure out what you need to trim and what you need to share. And that should help you with your transparent communication. And I'm not saying use these questions for every time something comes out. I'm talking about when it's serious to you, when you know it's serious, when the relationship is serious with whoever, is receiving that information on the receiving end. If you care, take a second, stop and think about it. Because another thing we know is once you say it, you done said it. People don't really forget what you say. So just keep that in mind. Now, here's a point of view. You're aware of conversations happening around you, about you, but they're not with you, right? For me, I've learned that I've grown into a place where I know I just have to accept that, right? That's part of the human experience. People going to talk, there's little communities and, everyone's getting where you fit in type of thing, right? But it also made me reconsider what information I'm sharing and with who. Boundaries, because if I'm having a private conversation with someone who's the gatekeeper, that information may not be as private as I thought it was. I've just learned to vent to people less and find other ways to release myself from those complications of emotional burden. My favorites are going to be journaling. One time for the pen, y'all. I love it. Um, it's going to be journaling. It's going to be talking to my therapist. And then it's also just going to be a voice note because my phone is with me, or I'm going to get to my phone probably before I can get to a journal or I can get in with my therapist, right? In an instance where I want to get it off my chest, I'm going to the voice note. I'm going to yell in the voice note. I might cry in the voice note. I might just talk normal, but I'm going to get it out and I'm going to get it off of me. As we learned earlier, you really do have to get it off of you, and you should have a safe space to do that in. Now, speaking of a safe place, maybe you aren't aware how much information you withhold and how detrimental it has been in like some scenarios. Or maybe you are aware and you just don't know how to communicate any differently because you keep everything so close to your chest. I'll share with you a few strategies that I've found help me to communicate more transparently. First of all, really be so fucking for real with yourself and your intentions with what you're doing with this information. And know that your intentions in sharing it may not align with the impact that it has on the receiver. Also know that's out of your control and that is okay. Understand that you sharing information, especially if it's vulnerable with people who you deal with on a regular basis, is actually going to be received quite well. In most cases, when you're being genuine and honest about something, how can someone be mad at that? I think you'll be surprised with how that can actually just change your relationships with some people in general for the best. Imagine the last time a friend, a family member has some information they could have shared with you, but you didn't get that information in a timely manner and it changed. Maybe something small, something large, maybe the trajectory of your life, maybe your career path, whatever. But just imagine if the person came to you and they just said like, hey, I wasn't sure how to bring this to you, but I want you to know this, or I think you should know. Like, you just imagine the compassion of just that statement alone, because the person knows this information must be someone important for you to know. And they're already saying they're not sure how to come to you with it. So they should lower your guard, lower your defenses, and just receive the message, that they're giving to you. And on that note of receiving it, the person sharing the information should be open to feedback and they should ask for feedback if it's not, readily available. Make sure that your information and the message is being sent clear and it's being understood and interpreted correctly in the way that you intended it. Now, with that being said, you realize that we cannot control other people's emotions and reactions, but you can control how you handle it. So all I would say in that moment, once you've given the information, and this to say people every time, it's not going to be like, you're the bearer of bad news in the situation. There are positives, but I'm pretty sure you know how to receive that well. It's usually when it's a negative or stressful response, there comes an issue with, or how to receive that. A healthy way to handle someone's response to getting some maybe less than good information would just be to validate their feelings, their experience, because They have the right to feel however they feel. It's not up to you to try to change that, and there's no right or wrong. Just simply, I know what that must be like. I've been there. I can't imagine. If someone ended up getting hurt by you withholding information, you should be okay and be ready to apologize for that. It's fine to apologize, people. It's fine to get some things wrong in life, and you just got to pick it up and go forward from there. But don't run from it. Don't try to gaslight them. Don't gaslight them. That's going to make it worse. Don't do that. But unfortunately, in a lot of situations, the trust may be broken at this point. Sometimes you can actually rebuild the trust. Of course, it's going to be a hard process, an upward battle, especially depending on the specific circumstance. But anything is possible. And if you're able to begin the journey, it will be a major learning lesson in the relationship as a whole. Some tips for that: if you do decide, commit to more openness moving forward. And also follow through on all the promises that you make and improve your communication. But on the contrary, if that's not possible, be honest about the situation. Be honest about the reality of the situation. Don't wish them ill will. Don't try to make them pay. Don't hold hate towards them. That is not healthy for you. Okay? At this point, it's about you now. It is. The last thing that you want to do is to sink more time and effort and energy into something that you know you don't want anymore. When you know you don't want the relationship, it's probably best for you to just skedaddle. And of course, it depends on your relationship, right, people? So again, use your best judgment and discernment on what is best for you in your situation, your predicament. Now, I go back and forth with the thought of, when something is broken, is it truly ever able to be repaired? Maybe so, maybe no. What do you guys think? For me, a true rebuild is going to take work from all the parties involved, and sometimes just a simple apology and the calendar moving forward to the next date is not going to cut it. Like, I'm looking for change behavior, right? And I'm talking about in a major situation. We're talking about building trust back, people. We're not just talking about little white lie or whatever you want to call it. It could actually take as much time and work to repair the trust as it did to create it in the first place. My logic here is that it's going to have to be better going forward than it was previously, because previously it included this deception and however we got to this specific situation, right? So it's going to have to be better than it was. So if you do decide to rebuild, make sure that you're taking the time to check in with yourself and figure out if it's worth it for you. Just remember why you're doing it in the moments when it can get hard and difficult. Now, up to this point, we have talked about the complications of emotional burden and that we're wired one way, and how doing the opposite will literally do you harm. You don't need extra stress in your life, babe. I promise you don't. Now, also, we talked about how there's levels to transparency. You should be using your judgment and discernment to figure out the who, what, when, where, why, to determine what's the appropriate level of information you should be sharing. And the last thing we touched on was how being more upfront allows you to build safer and stronger relationships, and also how to repair them, if and when the trust should break. Now could be a great time to go ahead and consider, your own communication patterns. Think about the role you've played in some of your own relationships and how they transpired or expired. And speaking of expired, we are at the end of our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you heard something that was helpful. Next time, we'll focus on setting those healthy boundaries without the guilt. Make sure you don't miss it by subscribing. And don't forget to share, like, leave a review, and chime in. Take care. Got it, top, party, till I ever ask you to take me, you go shopping and